Welcome to Chaos, Courage and Coffee, the podcast for anyone who's felt like on the outside I'm holding it together, but inside I'm struggling.
And we do it with honesty, heart, and just enough coffee to get through the day.
Good morning, Vanessa. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. You all right?
Actually, I thought I'd like to talk a little bit about communication today. And the reason I say that, because recently I had an interaction with somebody where I thought that what I'd said was perfectly clear. I understood, or we had a discussion, and I thought we'd agreed on a particular course of action. But then it turns out that the person I was talking with interpreted something completely different and then did something different and left me just scratching my head wondering, why didn't they get it? I thought we were clear. So I thought today we could talk about communication and how we sometimes don't communicate so well.
Yeah, and we think it's perfectly clear and find out later it's not. I can so relate because it actually happened quite a lot with my husband, that I thought it was really clear and I thought we'd agreed stuff. And then later it always seemed different. And I just couldn't get my head around it. And I can remember one time we were having this discussion and it went on for a long, long time. And anyway, we finally agreed on it. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to test this. I hadn't pre-planned it, but I just thought, I'm just going to test it. And I went, so great, we've just agreed, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and went, no. It's like, wow, now I see where it goes wrong. Because I was sure we'd agreed it. And now I see why later he would have come back and said, but we didn't agree that. So I can totally relate to that. And I'm guessing we're not alone on this. I'm guessing this happens a lot.
I reckon it probably does. I think that's a safe bet.
It's just so hard because you have a conversation with someone and you assume they've understood you and you go ahead on that basis. Now I'm just thinking, actually, what is the other person thinking? Because the other person's also thinking they've understood you and they've gone ahead on the basis that they've understood you.
Well, I think that's a really important point. Maybe they think that they understand from their perspective and you're agreeing with their perspective and the thing they think. So I don't think it's one side. I think it's the joining part that is missing. So why do we, and this is the bigger question, I suppose, why do these misunderstandings happen? Even when we're perfectly civil and we have a discussion about it and we walk away thinking one thing and they walk away thinking something completely different. How and why does this happen? And I suppose that's the big question for today.
Yeah, I love it because everybody walks away happy, like, oh, we just had a really good conversation. Yeah, we agreed on everything. That was so good. And then later it can be a big eruption or whatever as it comes to light that no, you weren't at all thinking the same thing. So yeah, it's really interesting.
So I think one of the things that I have found over time, particularly in my relationship, and I think I had to teach my wife is that I am not a mind reader. I, I, c- I can't read your mind. If you want me to do something, tell me. And it could be a male female thing, a guy and a gal thing, so to speak. Um, that she sees things, and we do have different perspectives. And I don't want to go too far down this path, but she has a particular perspective. Her mind works a particular way. She sees certain things that I don't even look at and consider, but I see things and do things that she doesn't think about or consider. So I think one of the problems we have is perspective, um, and that my perspective of a situation is different to hers or different to yours. And so we communicate from our personal perspective without necessarily taking into account the other person's perspective and how they see the situation, what's important to them.
Yeah, I think perspective's definitely one thing. The other thing that when you started talking, made me think of some years ago, I was looking at personalities, and this was real, like, eye opener for me. They talked about the personality type who kind of just infers things. And this is me. This is me. It's like, floor's a bit dirty today, right? I'm kind of like, hint, hint, flagging it up in case you can't see it, didn't notice. And then having this little hopeful expectation that something might happen on that. Um, and that was leading me into trouble. Like, I eventually saw that that was me. It's not the other person. So whether you can say, like a male, female, or perspective or personality, how are we delivering that? I mean, I now see that's a poor delivery. Another example I've got is again about my husband. When I was changing nappies, so our second born was a boy, and I'm not saying it's a boy thing, but it did just happen with my boy, that you try and change the nappy, he just doesn't stay still. You're trying to put this nappy around his body that's moving. My husband could just sit there watching me struggle. And I kind of thought that was communication enough. I'm struggling, but it didn't lead to any action. So again, I can see clearly now that that's me. I needed to speak, but that was not, I don't know where it came from in me. That was not how I communicated. Maybe it was how I was taught or not taught, to just hope.
Is it and I'll just focus on the changing the baby for a little minute. Is it the unspoken expectation that if I say this, and it might be part of that hints that I was talking about before, we drop hints, but guys are pretty thick when it comes to this, or some people anyway, I know I am pretty thick when it comes to hints. If you want something, hints don't work. Just tell me straight up. Can you help me with this? Just, or even in frustration, help me hold this baby still. At least
Actually,
let
no,
me do it.
I've just thought about something else, what it might be. And again, now I'm going back to your male female thing, but let's just say masculine feminine thing. So in the masculine world, if you kind of pitch in and help a guy, you're actually saying, I don't believe you can do this on your own. You're needing my help. Now, now let's go back to perspective. If that's the male perspective, imagine if he was thinking, and I'm not saying he was, but if he was thinking, he might think, she's the mum, this is her job. Sorry, guys. Yes, he wasn't really one for changing nappies. She's the mum, she's the expert, this is her job. What could I offer anyway to help her in her area of expertise? And actually, all that's going to do is kind of imply that you can't do it on your own, which is, quite a big thing, as I say, roles reversed. Is that right? You're nodding. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a big thing. So if we do, as you say, from the male perspective, you don't trust me to do it my way. But I think from I know certainly my wife's perspective, if I just chip in and try to help, I'm taking over sometimes.
Mm.
So, but at other times I have to wait to sometimes there's an expectation of unasked for help.
Hmm.
And other times, if I do help without being asked, I'm taking
Mm.
over. So where do we win? And this might be part of the setting boundaries, the poor communication habits that people fall into. And I'm not just blaming her; it's partly me. And we all do this, and I'm not placing blame on anybody.
So
Uh,
now we're back to mind reading. You're supposed to read her mind as to when she needs help and when she doesn't. Situation might be the same to you, but in her head it's different. And it's like, oh, it's obvious you should have helped me then. Oh, it's obvious you shouldn't have taken over then.
yeah. So I've kind of learnt to ask, "Do you want a hand?" And if she says no, just leave it alone and walk away. Um, So, but that's about long-term relationships and learning what your partner needs.
Well, or is it? Or is it just us learning to communicate in a clearer way? So, I'm the same. Like, I didn't ask, and I learned that, well, why are you just expecting the person to help? If you want it, you have to say it, you ask. But in my head, there was something wrong with asking. So I didn't do it. And it's taken me a lot of years of learning. And you know what? It's so much easier just to ask. Just say, hey, do you mind giving me a hand?
Yep, absolutely. And it's very clear and it's easy. But even when I think sometimes we do communicate that clearly, and again, I'm going to go back to perspective here, the expectation is sometimes different from the reality because when you ask for help, what I see as being the problem might be different to how you experience the problem. And so the help I provide isn't the help that you're actually looking for.
Or I'll just throw in another one before we go down that path. Quite often, I think this is the one, they don't know what you want them to do to help. So you go, oh, couldn't you help? Like, you might be frustrated by then, so it doesn't come out very well. Why can't, don't just watch me. Can't you help me? And they're like, well, what do you want me to do? Which by that point, when you're already frustrated, adds to the frustration. So another reason the person might not be understanding your non-verbal communication is they wouldn't know what to do if they did help. So, sorry, back to what you were saying anyway with that thread.
Um, I think that the what we ask for and what we get, or what we communicate and what we get, can sometimes be different. Um, I don't know if it's necessarily a lack of expectation or a lack of communication, poor communication, or if it's an expectation versus reality or perspective. But I think we need to understand that if we communicate one thing and then somebody tries to fill it, maybe there is, well, I'm going to say, yes, there is a lack of communication or a difference in understanding.
Mm.
And
Okay, so
so,
we've got the not communicating verbally at all and just implicitly hoping. And then moving on from that, let's assume we have communicated with someone, and I'm not just talking about asking for help now, we're back to talking about communicating, and we've got the different perspectives, and we don't allow for that. We only see our perspective. And in that moment, do we even consider there's a whole different way of looking at this?
yeah, I think it's like, I'm going to use this analogy, packing the dishwasher. Some
Oh,
peop For some people, there's a right and a wrong way to pack the dishwasher. And I know there are arguments, I have been arguments in a lot of houses about this, and that's why I bring it up. Um, it's really simple. The dishwasher can be packed, I believe, in multiple different ways, and there's not one necessarily right way and one wrong way. If the dishes are getting cleaned,
I think that's the big thing. So I was going to disagree with you, but yes, if the dishes are getting cleaned.
that's going to be really, I think, the only determinant of right or wrong in this particular analogy. We
Oh,
could say,
but is that just a perspective?
well,
That's
it's
your perspective, is it's right. Anyway,
Mhm.
it's right if the dishes are clean. But I think I could give you a different perspective on that.
Okay.
Is I'm the one who's unloading the dishwasher and I want it easy to unload. So there's another reason that there's a right and a wrong. So you see, already you're stuck on your perspective.
Well, we can take a little bit further and say, how many dishes can we fit in? Can they all fit in? Or do we need to then have some left over that we have to wash by hand? So there might be a right or wrong way. Or I'm not going to say they're right or wrong. Perhaps they might be, one might be a little bit better than the other, but it's not wrong because the dishes still get cleaned.
But that's the thing, we do think there's like a right and wrong way because in our head, it's about the dishes being clean, and in my view, about easier to unload it and all sorts of other things like that. But we don't necessarily see those things. So we're just left with the arguments of right and wrong. And of course, we can argue about it because we've got a whole different purpose. And, let's take this way away from the dishwasher. Let's take it on bigger things in life. I mean, we're a little bit stuck on home things, and I could carry on with that and talk money or something, or we could take it into a different context of friends or workplace to see that this is happening all the time, everywhere, because we are stuck on our perspective.
Mm.
And that's not our fault. Of course we're stuck. We got to have a perspective. You got to start somewhere.
But I think where the problem is that we don't recognize or acknowledge the other person's perspective, that they have a different perspective.
Yes.
And I think that's really important, that we need to have that realization and understanding that perspective matters. And perspective is going to bring, what is right and what is wrong for somebody else. And we don't all have to agree. And I think that's what, makes the world such an interesting place, is that there are so many people and there are so many different perspectives on how things can or perhaps should be done.
Yeah, but look, even if we did start to, everybody's listening to this and they're now going to start to consider everyone has a different perspective. Okay, but now what? How does that help us? Imagine you've got this issue at work and you're explaining something and you're considering that they've got perhaps a different perspective. But how now? How's that gonna help me? How am I gonna explain it differently? What am I gonna do? Because, I still wanna move forward with getting the achievement that or conveying what I'm trying to convey to them. So how does this help me that they might have a different perspective?
I think sometimes we need to ask, how do you see this, or communicate? And I bring this up for a reason, and I'll circle back to it a little bit later on. Um, I think sometimes we need to explain the problem, particularly in a workplace. This is the problem. This is what I see. What do you think? What do you see? Those sorts of words, so that you're getting that different perspective. And then you can consider and perhaps reframe, or change your language, or modify your expression of the problem to get a better outcome. But then you're
So
taking into that other perspective.
so asking a question, getting some feedback and clarifying. Maybe that's the big thing we miss. Kind of we just drop and run. Okay, blah 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 blah. So you able to do that? Yes, oh good. Okay, and off we go.
And then the delivery looks different to the expectation once again. But and I'm going to circle back around. I'm going to clarify this. And it's something that you talked about before with your husband, and you just said again then, that you confirm understanding. Are we agreed on this? And you thought you were agreed that you're going to take this action. Your husband said, no, we're not doing that. I don't know if he presented a different thing, his understanding, we're going to do this or not. Um, but it is something that we do in negotiations, in formal negotiations, is that when we agree to a certain point, we need to confirm understanding of what has been agreed to. And so, and I think that's something we don't necessarily do in relationships when we get outside that formal context. And again, it's what you did with your husband, which was really great in confirming that you didn't agree, or you'd agreed to two different things.
I don't feel it helped me much. It just wasted a couple of hours of discussion or argument or whatever it was, and then we got nowhere. I don't think either of us knew where to go from there.
Well, it has achieved one thing, and that's a great byline for this particular podcast episode. Uh, but I think the clarification of understanding,
Mhm.
we often do the first bit. Can you do this? Yes, I can do that, and we go away and get it done. As we've talked about, impact is different to expectation, but the lack of understanding, or the lack of clarification, reaching agreement on these are the steps you're going to take. Sometimes it's time, and I get it. We're not always going to have that time, or be thinking in that context of, I need to make sure that you understand exactly what I'm talking about or what I want. You know, Would you?
I could introduce a wonderful phrase. I went back to the UK, it was about 10 years ago now. My parents had moved to the West Country, so Devon, Somerset area. And my mum said, now I need to help you understand a little bit about how the locals work. If you ask for something to be done, they'll say, yes, I'll do that directly. Now, what directly means in their language is anything but directly. It does not mean it will get done in the foreseeable future. It's a terminology, and you had to be in the know to understand the terminology. So, yeah, that's even using words that, and that's my interpretation. And that's the interpretation that we put on it and how we use the word, and it means something completely different. How confusing is that?
Well, yeah, I would have thought directly means right now, not in 2 weeks' time. So that's an interesting use of language.
It is, isn't it? But maybe it highlights how I mean, that's just, that's an area of the UK, and that's just how they've developed the wording. Well, maybe we do that in families, so where I'm brought up, say in my family, this is how we talk, this is what we mean. Then I get together with someone else, or I talk to my friends, and I say a word and they take it completely differently because in their household and where they came from, it didn't mean the same thing. How was I to know?
Yeah, meaning and expectations can be different depending on background, experience, culture, all those sorts of things. Absolutely.
So maybe that's why we have to clarify more with words, because we need to know that even our words can have different meanings to somebody else's words.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, all right. So where are we at? What's our summary for today?
Well, the thing was, we kind of assume that people understand what we say because we know what we're saying, we know what we're conveying, and we kind of assume that they do. And sometimes, so we backtracked and said sometimes we don't even say things, and we just have this expectation, which can come from culture and so on as well, not just hinting at you. So the first thing is actually use the words, but then understanding that even the words are not enough because we have different perspectives. And so what we said further than that is we need to clarify, and we need to, communicate. Are we on the same page with this? And ask some questions and clarify before we kind of leave it and assume that both sides have understood the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much on point. I think you've done well in your summary.
Excellent. Well, then from here, I hope that everybody listening will think of a couple of things of actions they can take to do differently, because I know I had to learn to not just anticipate that people would do things, but actually to start to communicate it. So think of maybe 2 actions you can take to do something differently to, help to clarify. And this isn't just us communicating to them. Remember, when someone's communicating to you, you want to be asking, don't just assume you've understood it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest problems in communication is that we assume that the other person understands what we're talking about. We don't clarify.
Yep.
So awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. It's been
Thank you,
wonderful
Brett.
again. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks for being with us today on Chaos, Courage and Coffee. Remember, you're not alone, and you don't have to figure it all out at once. What part of today's conversation stood out for you?
This podcast is about showing up in the mess, not waiting until it's all sorted out. If today helped, share it with someone else who might need it too.
And if you're navigating your own version of chaos, we'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment, message us, or join the conversation.
We'll be back soon with more honest talk, less pressure, and just enough courage to get through whatever's next.
See you next time on Chaos, Courage and Coffee.